Hey everybody, welcome back and welcome to the Monday vlog. Hope you all had a great weekend, and we got a fun subject in store for you today, which is light wind kiteboarding. For all of you who are riding here in the Southern California area, I know light wind kiting is a big thing, and it's gonna be something that's gonna help you get out more days on the water. We don't really get too many of the high wind days here, so the more you can master that kind of marginal wind day, the better you're going to be at getting out and having more fun on the water. I'm going to give you a tip with kites, and I'm going to give you a tip with boards. So with the kites, I'm going to talk about two things, two different kite control techniques you can use for getting out in the light wind. The first one is utilizing lift. And what do I mean by that? When you're doing your power stroke, when you're first starting off your riding, you want to keep yourself as light on the water as possible. That's going to help you out with getting up and riding in the light wind. And you can accomplish that by utilizing the lift of when you bring the kite up to 12 o'clock from your initial downstroke. So what I'm referring to for upstroke and downstroke, when you're first starting off, you have your kite at 12, and you're either going to dive your kite down to 2 o'clock or to 10 o'clock, depending on the direction you're riding. Now that usually can get you up and riding by itself, but in the really light wind, you may need to bring the kite back up to 12 and then back down again. That up motion is going to lift you above the water, and that's going to allow you to be lighter across the top of your board, allowing you to ride at slower speeds. Now if you have slower wind speeds and you are able to start riding at lower speeds, it's going to help you out quite a bit. So what I tell most of my students is don't worry about just getting that initial dive down and getting that forward pull, but worry about feeling that lift you receive in your harness, bringing the kite back up to 12 o'clock. And if you get that motion down and being really efficient at bringing the kite down in front of you and continuing the pull forward, and while the kite goes up to 12, you continue that pull and feeling that lift now in your harness, it's going to help you out in the lighter days. Another tip is kite loops. And you can utilize the kite loops in either your first start from the water when you're laying down, because it creates a ton of power with the way the kite flies through the power zone of the wind window, or you can also utilize this for transitions. So for your start, when you're laying in the water, depending on the direction you want to go, you're going to loop the opposite side. So if I want to go right, I'm going to pull hard on my left hand to get the kite to loop down and then continue off to the right side. If I want to go to my left, I'm going to pull hard on my right hand, having the kite loop down in front of me and off to the left side. That way the power is consistent and I slingshot in the direction I want to go to. Okay, now you can also utilize the kite loop for transitions. By utilizing a kite loop for transitions, you're keeping the kite powered in front of you, and you're not really going to lose too much power during the transition process. If you're doing the traditional up and over technique, what ends up happening is the kite sometimes can go too far to the edge of the window and you're going to lose your power. So by utilizing a kite loop and keeping it down in front of you, you'll hold your power the whole time. You're going to be able to keep your board speed, and that's what's going to be really important for keeping you above the water in the low wind. So when I'm going from my right, turning back left, I'm going to bring the kite up a little bit to give it space from the water. I'm going to pull very hard on my right hand to get the kite to travel down in front of me, loop around, and come off the left side so I can now travel to my left. Vice versa, if I'm going from left to right, I'm going to bring the kite up slightly before the transition, pull hard on my left hand to bring the kite down, and loop around to start traveling over to the right side. And that's going to keep me traveling over to the right. Those two kite skills are going to help you out a ton when it comes to light wind kiting, and especially when it comes to the board I'm going to talk about here in a minute, the hydrofoil. But first, let's dive into board choices. So we have our three different types of boards we can ride on the water: twin tips, surfboards, and then we have the hydrofoils. The twin tips, if you're trying to get out in lighter days, you want more surface area. The more surface area you have, you're going to be able to stay above the water and ride at slower speeds, and that's going to help you for getting out in light wind. For surfboards, the more volume you have, the more float you receive, which is going to help you out. And then your fins are a huge part of getting up in light wind. When you have deeper fins, you basically utilize those to get yourself up and riding. The fins create very little drag, but they're very efficient at holding the board's edge and keeping you in the direction you want to ride. So a tip for people who are riding surfboards for light wind, what I'd recommend is try to keep the board riding flat to the water, so that way you're not getting much drag from trying to hold an edge. And what I do is I press my toes really hard into the toe side rail of the board to keep it flat, and I press my back foot forward. And you can see there how the nose is starting to go up behind me. That motion is going to help push the nose of the board upwind, keeping the board riding super flat with very little drag. And I'm utilizing just the fins now to direct the board upwind. That technique right there is super useful not only for light wind, but if you're using smaller kites for surf riding and for riding in the waves, and you don't have as much power to get upwind, you can utilize that little skill right there, getting your weight more forward on the board, keeping it flat, and utilizing the fins to help you get upwind. That's a big tip right there. Now, when it comes to the hydrofoils, put this away for a second here. When it comes to the hydrofoils, that is a whole other video in itself, so I'm not going to dive too much into it. But basically, the hydrofoil works really well in the light wind. It's probably the most efficient board you can have for light wind kiting, and that's mainly due to the foil below you providing so much lift and very little resistance it has when riding on foil across the water. One way to get to the foils, a lot of people ask me, is what's the best way to start getting into foiling? When can I learn foiling? I'd recommend this. For those of you who are looking to get into the light wind with using a hydrofoil, you should be able to be very comfortable with riding upwind on a twin tip and have fairly decent kite control. Past that, it really doesn't matter if you can jump or anything like that. Sometimes for those of you who really just want to get into the foiling, it helps just to get the basics down and then hop over to the hydrofoil early on, so that way you can get the learning process out of the way. I will say it is a totally different monster and it takes a lot of patience, but if you have good kite control, that's going to help out a lot, just because of the way the board seems to get away from you in the water. So being able to body drag and retrieve your board quickly, those are the things you want to have to get you into the hydrofoil. And I'll make a video about the hydrofoils and tips in riding in light wind with those in a future video. So those are my light wind tips for all of you. I hope that's helpful. And if you have any other questions that you want me to get a little bit more in depth on any of the things I talked about, please leave a comment down below, or you can always drop us an email or give me a call, and I'd be sure to help you out and point you in the right direction for light wind riding. Got some fun videos in store for us over the week. We have rider Craig Cunningham from Duotone. He's got an interview with us on Wednesday, and I'm really excited for that. Really looking forward to showing you guys what he has going on in his world right now. And we got some fun stuff in store for Friday's video as well. So be on the lookout for this week's videos. Again, hope you all had a great weekend, and happy kiting, everyone. See ya.
Hey everybody, Chip Ripperson here. If you like that video, be sure to subscribe to our channel. That way you'll be notified every time we post new videos like this one. And if you want to see more videos that are already on the channel, be sure to click right here for more of our pro rider interviews, gear reviews, and more vlog posts. Happy kiting, everybody. Ew!